the moonlight. We are going to have a very wonderful conversation, and that conversation will be steered by none other than our very own. Let me tell you about her. Before I mention her name, you will know it by the time I'm done. So for nearly a decade, she has nurtured female leadership and social entrepreneurship in Africa through the Leading Ladies Network. It's a non-for-profit organization she founded in Ghana. Through the Leading Ladies Network, she has fostered an ecosystem of women and girls who have ambitious goals, strong character, and resolve to serve as impactful leaders in business, civil society, and government. In May 2012, the World Economic Forum on Africa recognized her as one of Africa's rising leaders. And in 2016, she was awarded an Eisenhower Fellowship in honor of her pioneering work nurturing emerging women leaders. She has served for 3 years on the foundation board of the World Economic Forum's Global Shapers Community and is a current member of the board of directors of Ashesi University, a leading liberal arts university in Ghana. She previously served as a leadership consultant to UN Women, helping to develop leadership curricula to enhance the capacity of women leaders in East and Southern Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Yawa Hansen-Quao. You can do it better. I am very sure you can do it better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. It is such an honor to be here by the fireside. Can we give it up for the creativity? I feel really honored to be here tonight. Let me first acknowledge the board chair for BCA and the CEO and all of the other distinguished individuals that have made this conference possible. It's been energizing, it's been reaffirming, and I just really believe that this vision will be a consequential contribution to an African Renaissance. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for your vision. So my job tonight is to moderate a conversation about how do we make Africa work for young people. Africa is a continent that is teeming with all sorts of possibilities. There are so many opportunities. We are resource rich. We have so much that we are gifting the world. I was with a group of people yesterday evening for dinner, and we noted that these days you can't even go to a nightclub, any self-respecting nightclub, without hearing a track from Burna Boy, Davido, or some of our other giants that are impacting the music scene around the globe. So our mark on the world is indelible. But there's a lot that we have to toil with. Africa's the youngest continent, and I don't know about you, but it troubles me deeply that the story of global poverty is really a story about Africa. The statistics say that by 2030, 1 out of every 3 poor person will be African. So our panel today aims to uncover some of the strategies and initiatives that we can put in place today to ensure that the continent that we gift to our young people actually works for them. We heard from Dr. K.Y. Amaku today, his vision, inviting us to all contribute to an Africa that is both prosperous and united. And young people have a critical role to play in delivering that. So I invite you to join me in this crucial dialogue. I have an esteemed panel of guests that I will be introducing to you now, and hopefully we will have a very engaging discussion. So without further ado, let me start with introductions of my panel. My first panelist is from Morocco. Her name is Sanaa Benchoukouran. She started her career in an HR consulting firm, and for 7 years, she worked with some of the biggest names in the field. She has worked both internationally and nationally, and acquired a lot of recognized expertise before she even joined the corporate world. Her career spans over 25 years, and she's focused on strategy, digitalization, innovation, and corporate culture. She currently serves in the role as regional head of HR and communications for the France, Africa, Benelux region at Majorel. Can you help me welcome to the stage, Sanaa Benchoukouran? My second panelist tonight by this fireside is Dr. Sangu Dele. Dr. Dele is the CEO of CarePoint, and CarePoint is an entrepreneurial venture that is seeking to transform healthcare and healthcare delivery in Africa. He's an author, an investor, and an entrepreneur, and a board director. He currently serves on the board of overseers at Harvard University. He and I jointly serve on the board of Ashesi University, among other educational institutions that he supports. Dr. Dele believes deeply in Africa's young people, and I am honored to call him a friend. So Dr. Sangu Dele, please take your seat on the stage. Last and certainly not the least, it's my pleasure to introduce Abena Asamoah. Abena Asamoah is the current managing director for the Ghana Stock Exchange. I was saying to someone earlier tonight that she's one of the most brilliant people I know. And fun fact, Abena was one of my first bosses when I started my career. And it's just such an honor to continue to see her share her light with the world. She is in her role as managing director of the Ghana Stock Exchange, the first female to occupy this role in the exchange's 32-year history. So she is a history maker and really one of the brightest lights in my orbit. So Abena Asamoah, MD of the Ghana Stock Exchange, please join us on this panel. And let's kickstart our conversation. Can you hear me? All right. So ladies and gentlemen, tonight's panel is a panel that's really near and dear to my heart. I spent a lot of my career working with young people, and I know that young people have such potential that they can and are willing to bring to help us see an African Renaissance. So I wanted to kickstart the panel with you, Dr. Sangu Dele. You have, over the years, been involved in different ventures, but I have noted that you have a particular interest in education. And I thought that we could kickstart the conversation with education. And what do you see as the opportunities as you are straddling the corporate world and really as an entrepreneur, but also as a board director? What do you think are the opportunities for young people? And are you satisfied with what you see happening on the continent in terms of educating the next generation of leaders?
Thank you for the question. I thought we agreed prior to the panel that all the tough questions go to Abena, but nonetheless, thank you to the organizers for inviting me. Definitely a privilege. I think from my perspective, I would agree with what I believe the earlier gentleman was Mr. Baden. He alluded to some of those remarks in terms of there's a massive disconnect between the product that is our current existing educational system versus the demand that's coming from not just industry today, but projecting what industry tomorrow looks like. The good news is if we think about it from a demographic story, we're very well positioned as a continent, right? Not only are we going to have a population of 2.5 billion in 2050, according to projections, we're also going to have an estimated 70% of the global youth labor force in the world are going to be in Africa. And that picture becomes very clear when you start to look at birth rates around the world. In most of the world, birth rates are below replacement level. 1.4 in Europe, 1.7 in the US, 1.1 in China. In Japan, and I'm not even trying to be funny, there is an existential crisis in Japan because people in Japan are not having sex. Again, I'm not trying to be funny. It's a very serious issue where if those projections don't change, you'll see the end of the Japanese civilization. We've never seen any civilization in the history of mankind that has been able to survive once birth rate has reached the level it has in Japan. And so the only real source for the next 100 years of labor force is going to come from the continent. Given this huge opportunity, what are we going to do with it and where are we now? Today, as we speak, every single year, 11 million young people enter the labor force just to meet 3 million formal jobs. And that's the gap today with us at 1.3 billion. Fast forward to 2.5 billion, where we have 70% of the global youth force. So the urgency for now is only further compounded by the greater urgency for the future. And it means that we have to rethink education across all verticals. And I'll give just a tiny example to make it short. Take healthcare. We currently have, with 1.3 billion people, as a continent, we're 15% of global population. Yet we disproportionately represent 25% of global disease burden. 1 in 4 diseases globally are in Africa, even though we're only 15% of global population. And yet, with 25% of the global disease burden, we only have 3% of global healthcare workers and 1% of global healthcare expenditure. Then when you factor in 2.5 billion in 2050, where are we going to get all those doctors and nurses from? There's a global shortage of 4.2 million medical personnel. Where are we going to get them from? And if we're going to use the old ways of doing things, like you're going to train a neurosurgeon and come back in 20 years, hundreds of millions of lives will be lost. And so we have to rethink how we look at education, how we train, and adapt it for the new world. And the final thing I'll say in closing is, as we think about this new world, and we understand the implications of what AI, quantum computing, and these other large forces are going to do to disrupt economies of the future, we must ask ourselves, what are we doing today? And if I go to elementary schools, primary schools, and high schools throughout Ghana, and I look at the conversations happening, we're still preparing ourselves for a 19th century world when we're about to catapult ourselves beyond the 21st century, technologically speaking. Thank you.
So Dr. Dele, you've kind of painted what feels like an apocalyptic reality in the education space. And you talked about, the lack of preparedness of young people in Africa for the world of work. So I'd like to segue to you, Sanaa, as you think about with your HR practice over 25 years, and if there's no change in how we're educating young people, it seems like there is a change in what young people are expecting from work. So in the previous discussion this morning, there was talk about millennials and some of their behavior, this sense of, wanting to find meaning and purpose in work, and the unwillingness to, stay in one role for a prolonged period. Do you feel like companies need to change how they view capacity in terms of young people? Do you feel like companies of today are, doing right by young people?
people, or do they need to change as well?
Thank you, Yawa, for this question, very relevant, because we really need to uh, be aware that we have absolutely big treasure in Africa, that is our young people, because they are talented, they are very creative, they are agile, they are resilient, they are mature, and they have really high expectation for the future. And what we do need as organization is to help them grow, simply. They don't demand so much. They first demand respect. Respect for who they are, for their singularity, for their difference, for their ideas. They also expect listening for their contribution, for their ambition, for what could be their added value, because we tend to consider our talent are tools, and they are not tools, they are human beings. They also need to build trust with the company, and trust is built by transparency, by involvement, by empowerment, by having a clear and inspiring vision about the future. And they need to be involved in the construction of this future. We all know big companies building strategy for the next 5 years in a small office with the top management, and then having top-down approach to say, hey, what we are doing in the future, the next 5 years, please execute. They don't want that. They want to be involved, and they want to be, they want to take part in the journey. They also are very sensitive about question and the matters like social responsibility, diversity, equity, inclusion, because they know that the world where we are living now is going bad, and they know that they are the future. So they need to feel that their companies are sensitive to this topic and have a clear position about social impact on their immediate environment, how they can contribute and feel useful for the local communities, how to and the social responsibility also began by the employees themselves, because you can't handle this external social strategy before without taking account the intern employees. They also need to have a balanced life. So topics like work at home, flexible hours are important. We can have like industrialist organization that make all people work at the same time, living at the same time, heavy work hours. What is happening in the company? How we can make their lives because the company puts you as a manager, you will be listened, and all your instruction will be followed because you have the authority. Authority comes from added value, from giving example, from being close to your team, and how to build confidence and trust, and how to help them to grow. I think also that us as organization, taking into account what just have been said about education, we have a big responsibility about empowerment of our young people. There is a lot of things that education, when they are upgraded, it's not finished. We need to start something internally, because leadership, it's question of we don't learn it at school. This is something that need to be taught in the work environment. So we have a responsibility about internal and external employability. What I mean is that I am aware that there is no more organization that can make promises about a clear career path in the companies, and clear you will be in 1 year at this position, and in 2 years in this position, because there is a lot of uncertainty in the environment. So, but what we can do is to make their talent grow and grow, and make them go at the maximum that they can do. And even if it's not in the company, the engagement that in my company we check, we can accompany you to as far as we can. But what is clear is what you will learn, and what the competencies that you will develop will support you all your career life, even if it's external, and it's okay for us, because our main goal is that they can go as far as they can.
Excellent point. You know, I've been working with young people for most of my profession, and I think many of the things you've just described are really the aspirations that what a lot of young people wish their employers would be thinking. I know that, you know, Sangu kind of painted an apocalyptic picture for education. As you were speaking about employers, you're alluding to the fact that there's more that employers can do to create conducive environments for young people. I want to come to you, Abena, and talk about business. Do you see business listening as we think about financial inclusion, especially, and the fact that so many countries in Africa have such high unemployment rates? A lot of young people are thinking the way out is business and entrepreneurship. Are you finding, you know, patterns that you can talk to us about? I've been following your work at the Ghana Stock Exchange and have noted with pleasure that you're investing a lot in young investor groups. So teaching young people how to invest. But Ghana, like many African economies, are just really struggling with post-COVID economic meltdowns. So can you paint a picture for us of what the reality is? And can you help us see what the opportunities are for financial inclusion for young people?
Thank you very much, Yawa. And it's really an exciting time for me to join this evening's panel. First, on the population size of Africa in a few years, even what we have today, there are very clear things we will need. We will need to feed this population in terms of opportunities. We need to clothe them. We need to educate them. We need to move goods and services, logistics. We need to treat medical care. So these are all opportunities that are gaping at us, just for Africa, much less the rest of the world that even today do not have the workforce that they need. There are countries in North America every day, companies are losing their staff too, across all sorts of fields. So for me, when I look at today and 10 years, 20 years down the line, our educational model needs to switch to vocational, technical, psychology, and STEM education for Africa. We need to move focus to that. Vocational skills, my hairdresser, Ivy League educated girl, came to Ghana, went on the internet, learned how to do natural hair. I look at her and say, Zubi, 3130 Naturals. Did we have to pay $250,000 to an American school for you to come back and be a hairdresser? But she's built a hugely successful model, and she's grown down into manufacturing of beauty products. The girl I work with for my makeup when I have to do a photo shoot, Martina, she's a biochemist from KNUST. She started with makeup, bridal, built a successful business, and has also in discussions moved into products, making products, beauty care products that she's selling. So vocational, we heard the story about the shoes, vocational, technical skills, psychology, because in the world we have today, not just the future, where content creation that will enable digital solutions, AI, querying data, requires these skills, STEM skills, vocational technical skills. But on top of that, I think every African must have financial literacy skills, because our problem is not human. Every single person must understand how I save, how I make my money work for me by investing my savings, and how I manage my risks, and how through the process I'm showing integrity. And so the last area that I think every African must be educated on formally is on integrity. Ashesi University has this, is it the Honest Pledge, the Honor Code, and it goes back to leadership. It ties into that. Every single one of us must go through this. I see it in three ways. There's the things governments can do. So for us, as an industry, we are spearheading an effort to work with the Ministry of Education here in Ghana so that financial education can start from, 5 years old through to adult education. So there are those policies all of us must come together, all industries must come together and advocate. Those in manufacturing, we must advocate and push for our policy makers to make sure that we are not throwing away vocational skills, STEM, etc. Then it comes to the business side. For us at the Ghana Stock Exchange, we've decided that youth investments is very critical. Dr. Pebi here, when he was a student, I worked with him a lot on setting up investment clubs around Ghana. At the Ghana Stock Exchange last year, we reached out to over 35 institutions directly through physical and online seminars, reached out to over 50,000 students and educated them, working with our partners, Young Investor Network. So far this year, we've hosted over 600 students at the stock exchange in visits and working with our community to put them in internships, etc., so people can begin to understand what it feels like to invest. We are coming out with digital tools where people can simulate investment portfolios and manage that. So that's at the business level. And at the business level, I think that it's gone past what you do just for your staff or to promote what you need, because this opportunity we talk about as our population could very easily become a threat to us. It will not allow anyone operate a business if we do not tackle the opportunities for them. And then the final side is the individual. The individual, regardless of what you go and learn today, we are learning that it behoves on us to enhance our own skills. Technology, digital tools have enabled us to sit at home and learn how to code, learn how to create content, learn how to shoot a video, put it on TikTok, build 2 million followers, and build a brand out of it and monetize that. So it's no longer a question of I've left school. Is government going to hire me? Am I going to get a job at another organization? It's the things we need to take personal responsibility for in terms of enhancing our skills to create value, either for an employer or create value for ourselves as an entrepreneur. So these are the things I'd like to add. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I really like what you said about working with the ministries of education to integrate financial literacy into the curriculum. And when I heard you say 5 years old, I thought, wait, what? But you're right, the sooner young people are exposed to this information, the better. So thank you for those submissions. You know, Dr. Dele, I want to come back to you because you have lived experience as an African entrepreneur. And as people think about Africa and business, we've over the years been hearing a lot of focus on micro and small. And, you know, it begs the question, what about the entrepreneurs with the big ideas? And I've been watching and learning, you know, directly from you about your journey with CarePoint, the raising of funding to scale your enterprise. And you've been, in many people's opinions, including mine, pretty successful. So for the young people in this audience who are just feeling so beat down by these environmental factors, I start my business, I can't access credit, you know, and there are, no judgment please, but lots of pitch competitions, lots of hoops to jump through, lots of seemingly useful, but in the long run, not so useful things being offered to young people with ideas. And, you know, for the young people in this room, for, you know, at least the communities that I'm most familiar with, like Ashesi, students from Ashesi, our emerging public leaders, our leading ladies in this room, who see you as one of the outliers in this space. What would your advice be? And then can you bring it up a level to what policy interventions, for example, do you think could be helpful to really enable youth-led enterprises to really thrive?
Again, Yawa keeps violating the agreement we had. We said the tough questions. You know, my senior is to my left. Then she keeps bringing the hard questions here. But very, very good and thoughtful question. I want to give a bit of a nuanced response. So the first thing is it's important what you said about the micro, right? It's been something that's been a big frustration of mine. In the aftermath of World War II, when Europe and Japan's economies had been absolutely, completely ravaged, it was General Marshall in his commencement address at Harvard University who called for the Marshall Plan. That Marshall Plan was not to go and give sheep and goats to Europeans in their villages and tell them they should pull themselves out of poverty. If that was the case, Europe would still be in poverty. The Marshall Plan was the most ambitious economic plan of its kind that the world had ever seen, which invested massively in infrastructure and which took large-scale investments to revitalize the industries. Yet when it comes to Africa, micro, give a woman a goat and 200 cedis, come back in a year and show how she's gone from 5 tomatoes to 7 tomatoes, and let's clap for ourselves. Such poverty of ambition. The data shows us 20% of firms globally are responsible for 90% of all the economic value created in the world. We need business baobabs. We need large businesses that will be able to create jobs. And we need to get away from this celebration of mediocrity, where we always want to celebrate little things. Little things and little thinking will keep us at the bottom. If you look at countries that have made it, Singapore, Malaysia, China. As my mother and many mothers used to say when we were growing up, do they have two heads? Do they have two heads? They don't. So why is it that those countries have been able to, how we say, you see, even the alarm is frustrated. Why is it that those countries, Singapore, Malaysia, China, and I mentioned those countries are not the West, because these are countries that in one generation was able to transform their countries and bring people out of poverty. Do we have two heads? Which brings me to the other side of the coin. Yawa's question implicitly wanted me to give some encouragement to entrepreneurs and almost set a path for how can you do this? But I want us to be a bit careful. There's a way in which sometimes we glorify and we over-glorify entrepreneurship. We over-glorify it. We look for these examples of anecdotes and say, Sangu did it, but it's dangerous. It's dangerous because one, it is not the norm. Two, the system was not designed for success. And three, it allows our leaders to escape the accountability of doing the right things to create the right conducive environment by them always saying entrepreneurship. Go and do entrepreneurship. I was on a panel where someone in government said, oh, now with the internet, you just click on it. That's just not how it works. Now, it's simply not how it works. How can you be an entrepreneur in this country? When last year, at the beginning of the year, if you had 5 million CDs in assets, that was $1 million. By the time you started Q4, that same amount of money was $300,000. We cannot talk about entrepreneurship without talking about macroeconomic stability. We cannot talk about entrepreneurship without talking about debt to GDP rising from 68% to 103%. We cannot talk about entrepreneurship and sources of financing when we've seen tens of billions of dollars being raised by our governments and being spent irresponsibly. We cannot create jobs as the private sector when we're constantly being harassed by the GRA. When we want to, if I go to Rwanda today in 6 hours, I can set up a company. We're tired. Enough is enough. If we want to create the jobs we want in Ghana and we want to transform Ghana, enough is enough. And you are clapping, but it starts with you. You are complicit and you are corrupt. And that is why the system continues. We are laughing, but it's true. We're all part of the system that's complicit and corrupt. And I have news for you. Today, we get up and we say, oh, Famanyame and Yeshri. At one point, this youth on the ground, looking with despair and hopelessness, the last Gallup poll, 96% of Ghanaian youth said if they get a chance, they'll leave the shores of Ghana. There's only so long your walls at Trasacco will protect you. At some point, if we are not careful, hell will break loose and the young people will come and they'll take it. So to prevent such an implosion of our society, we need to change Ghana today. And that change starts with you and I stopping the corruption, calling out those who have sold this country into slavery, and making sure that if we want to create the future, let's stop the nonsense and the pretense and the hypocrisy and the fake Christianity. And let's do the work that needs to be done now.
Fiery comments at this fireside. Lots of shots fired. Tables are being shaken. I see people in the audience fanning themselves. Oh, God is in control. You know, Sangu, thank you for, speaking your truth. And thank you for in many ways verbalizing what a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners are going through right now. And it begs the question, if Sangu is saying this, then, you know, like I said, you've been mildly successful with raising capital for your business. And for the young, you know, I had lunch today with, you know, she's a member of our Leading Ladies Network and someone who I've done a bit coaching with. And her small business that she, you know, we were talking through, and I could see the same exasperation that you've demonstrated here. And I think what I draw from that is we cannot entrepreneur our way out of bad governance. And, you know, there's a willingness that a lot of young people have to do right, to build businesses properly, and to Abena's point, do it ethically. But too many stories of how the system itself seems to be a harasser instead of an enabler. Those words of encouragement I was hoping for didn't come, but I think the call out was necessary. And, you know, again, thank you for speaking your truth in that sense. Sanaa, I want to come back to you and talk about, you know, this idea of creating the workforce of the future. You know, there have been lots of conversations and conferences around the future of work. And because you're in the HR space and, you know, you're probably seeing a lot of what's out there. Can you tell us the good, the bad, the ugly? Like, what are the gaps you're seeing in the young talent that's coming into your organization? What are the gaps and what are the skills that you would encourage the young people in our audience to invest in developing?
What we observed is that there is it's not a problem of technical skills, really, because you know, African youths are very smart and they learn very quickly. Our schools are efficient to teach them technical skills. I don't know, electricity and so on. That's not the problem. But what we observe, there is often a gap in self-development, soft skills, and managerial skills. I want to, my professional environment is mainly Francophone, so in French speaker. And I don't know, perhaps unfortunately, we have a very Francophone culture that invest a lot on in the education about learning by heart all things, and not for kids and the teenager, investing in self-development, self-confidence, communication skills, team spirit, critical spirit, all things that allow you to become a leader, true leader, and allow you to tomorrow inspire your team and make her go very far. So that's why really we will come back to social responsibility, because I really consider that us as organization, and in particular in private sector, our responsibility is to have a handover about this kind of topics and to invest enough money in their training, in their coaching, and in their empowerment, because they will be your leaders tomorrow. Really, in my experience, what I noticed, when you do it, you have return back on your investment very quickly, because I observed that they are very grateful they notice the effort, and what they want to show you is that you were right to trust them, and really we start this journey in Majorel in 2014 to create really this environment by training people, by trust them, and so on. We have observed a direct link between the investment in people in our revenue, and our revenue growth by 238% in 9 years. So we have, as organization, the bad reflex to say everything you spend as money for people is like a completely lost investment. That is absolutely false. People are our first capital, and they need to be there. And it's in the same, when there is crisis, the first investment that is reduced here is investment in people. And it's really a big mistake.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I like the fact that you highlight that investing in people is actually good for business. And I think a lot of companies don't have that patience to do that. And I think, you know, the more we can call out the contribution to the bottom line when you invest in people, the better. Just to follow up, like what are the strengths that you see the young people coming to work for you bringing to the table that perhaps previous generations didn't bring as much? I know you talked about the skills they need to improve, like the soft skills and the emotional intelligence, et cetera. But what is impressing you about the young talent that's coming to work for you?
First, creativity, really. It's their talents, the range of talents are very large, and they can ask, you know, for example, we need to sometimes in our company to build videos, movies, to, for example, advise the company. We mainly don't ask, we don't ask external companies to do it. We have a call to action internally, and really the talents that we find is absolutely amazing. The second thing is that they are digital native. So they are very connected. The knowledge that they have at this young age is impressive, and we didn't have the same when we were at the same age. Also their agility, they understand very quickly, and if you take time to explain them what is happening and why, and essentially why they need them to fight with you, they will fight with all their strength and with all their talents, and they will succeed. So they are very agile, they can change, they can be adaptable, they can really from today to tomorrow, they can do miracles. They are smart also, they are ambitious. They don't consider their employer and their condition as salary, as employees, as something that will last in the time. They are ambitious and they want tomorrow to start in entrepreneurship, and they are right, because really what we consider, we observe now, and they're especially after COVID, that they have the relationship with the companies has changed, and they consider entrepreneurship as the mainly the most important way to succeed. And perhaps they are right, because they know what are the tendencies, they know what people need, and they are very competent to create the needs in the consumers, really. I can speak like that for a long time, but I will stop because
Yeah, thank you for highlighting, what young people are bringing to the table: creativity, ingenuity, and smarts and agility. So thank you for that.
Abena, I want to come back to you. And, we like to say Africa's got all of the resources that the world needs. And, we don't quite see that translating into African businesses being among the biggest businesses in the world. As we think about the Ghana Stock Exchange, for example, there are many multinational companies, and you don't see very many indigenous businesses that have grown and scaled to the point of even being listed on the stock exchange. Could you tell us what you think needs to happen for us to see more companies that are indigenous grow to the scale that we see the multinationals do?
Right, that's a question I'm very, very passionate about. So thanks for bringing it up. But I also wanted to touch on something Sangu said. It's true that a relatively small number of organizations represents the majority of the world's value. But please do not take, it doesn't mean that what we call small businesses or medium-sized businesses, there isn't a place for them in the world. The world is filled with SMEs, and SMEs create jobs. So whilst we are all aspiring to create the next Apple, we can also look at the German example. Small businesses are critical to creating big businesses. And how they are critical to that is what we call the value chain. There are opportunities in the value chain. We talk about our natural resources, all of that, the capital it takes to build a global mining firm. And yet the capital it takes to be a service provider, the one that hires the talent for a mining company, the one that prepares the food for it, that value chain, for me, is so important how we develop that with local content. And that, for me, is a great opportunity for Africa's youth. We must encourage small businesses and see them grow, regardless of and the macroeconomic issues are important, but regardless of the macroeconomic situation. We've all seen a business, I'll give an example, Judy Foods. How many of you know Judy Foods? How many of you spend the crazy amounts of money I spend every month at Judy Foods? I cannot travel out of Ghana to my family to conferences without a suitcase full of Judy Foods. It's plantain, oil, salt, and packaging. Cocoyam and sweet potatoes, groundnuts. That business, I don't know, but per my estimate, it's a very profitable, well-run business. And so this, for me, sometimes we like to create big things. For me, I start with what creates jobs, what puts food on my table, what keeps me engaged, and what solves a problem in my community, as Dr. Ewa did for Ashesi. So SMEs, all of us sitting here, the example I gave of 3130 Naturals, these are important things. We talk about Rihanna, her music. How many albums is she going to sell versus how many products is she going to sell of Fenty Beauty that's going to make her money? Today, much of Rihanna's wealth comes from selling makeup and beauty products. So there is room for us to create jobs and to create wealth. And let's not look down on the SME business, because that will create jobs and that will create value. How do you do it in a difficult economic environment? You can't go and borrow money at 40%. You can't. So you look for partnerships. Today we are talking about MasterCard partnering with ABSA to give SMEs 1 million, 5 million cedis at 10%. The interest rate today says it's 40%, and yet MasterCard, a corporate, has partnered with financial institutions to give 10% to ensure that SMEs survive. And that is the example other SMEs like Margins, Casapreco, etc. must do. And that is the model Ashesi did to enable people across Africa, ALU, Africa Science Academy, etc., to ensure that more people have opportunities. So partnership is key. Sangu, you've raised money through partnership. You've invested money in other people's businesses because those companies were open for partnerships. We've had a stock exchange for 32 years, and yet many of our entrepreneurs do not want to open up to come on the stock exchange, raise capital, take partnership from these people, get the capital they need, and grow their businesses and transform their businesses. It's a matter that sits on my mind, and today I appeal. If you want to go far, you go with partnerships. We've created 3 markets. You can come on our alternative market if you're an SME, you raise money. We even go to the point we've set up a fund to help pay for your fees to advisors. Some companies have taken advantage of that. Intravenous infusions, raised money. A company that produces shito, came and raised money and then got partnership with KFC to supply sachet shito when you buy your KFC. So we have that market there. We have the main market for more larger size companies. We've created a 3rd market, a fixed income market where you can come and borrow money you pay back to. So the tool is here. You will not go far if you do not take advantage of partnerships. We had a pension fund person come to speak. Today, our pension fund industry, including SNIT, they have 50 billion Ghana cedis under management. 50 billion Ghana cedis under management. As at last year, at the end of last year, the tier 2, tier 3, together every month, those of you who sign your checks to the private managers, they have over 35 billion Ghana cedis under management. All the economies we are proud of and see whose development we want to follow, they've developed by using long-term savings such as pension funds, investing in private businesses to grow these businesses. 35 billion cedis available to say, come and take it for patient capital and grow your business. Entrepreneurs, step up to it. Because we didn't step up to it, they gave 95% of that money to government, which has now suffered a haircut. They have decided they are looking for opportunities to invest in the real sector. So don't be afraid of listing on the Ghana Stock Exchange. The companies that have listed and grown have done that this way. On Toronto Stock Exchange, the average capital raise is $2 million. The average capital raise on the Toronto Stock Exchange is $2 million US. We think that the Ghana Stock Exchange is for raising $100 million only. It's there to facilitate that if good corporate governance practices are important to you, because good corporate governance practices will ensure your business is sustainable. So I invite everyone, look at the GSE. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And you know, I love how you demystify what the stock exchange is and what the opportunities are. And I hope that, you know, those in the audience, especially those who are Ghanaian entrepreneurs, will take a step and look into this. You know, now I do want to open up to the audience. If you would like to ask a question to the panel, we want to spend the last 15 minutes or so of this discussion inviting questions from the audience. If you could raise your hand, I see a hand way in the back on the left-hand side. If you could give us your name, organization, affiliation, and just ask the question very briefly, we would be grateful.
and trainer. And so recently, I normally do corporate training. And recently, to give back, I thought I should do something for the youth. And it's so interesting that this topic is on board tonight. And so I had been going to a couple of schools to offer my training for the summer and beyond. And because I felt with the things that are going on at the moment, with all the economic hardships and all that, but the root is leadership, right? So I was offering this leadership training in schools. I know that the curriculum has subjects like government and things like that, but I them out. So I thought, okay, I'll offer these services. So going around with my letters and, explaining what I want to do. Then one principal says, well, we are very busy right now with the curriculum. And what's in the curriculum? Useless stuff. I mean, I'm not saying that they're not math and English and history are not useless. But the things that is the same stuff and that do not yield anything that will really, really make a difference.
And your question is?
So my question is how, okay, get into that very quickly. So my question is, how can we add this to make sure that leadership is in the curriculum at a very, very young age? Because
Early
right now they're
stage.
bringing stuff that
You.
children should not be learning, but leadership is not there.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Great
you.
question. Could we take the next two questions, please? Your name, affiliation, and quickly your question.
My name is Abena Asamoah, coming from KNUST, and I want to ask a question to Sanaa concerning the youth and their zeal to work. But through the years, we've seen that the youth are shifting their focus into other things like quick money, like betting and other stuff like that. But then in the educational sector, they are trying to educate us not to engage in such things. But is there anything in the business sector that they are doing to address some of these issues? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next question, please.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the fact that when
Your name and organization,
Okay.
please.
I'm Grace Conan, a MasterCard scholar from KNUST.
Great.
So during the discussion, we spoke about the fact that you believe in the young generation, you believe that we are talented, we are smart, and on different platforms that I've been able to attend, that's the same thing that is being said, but on the ground, it's different. The elder generation tend to say that as young people, we are more and more aligned, how do I say it, put aside, we don't really take our values and culture very seriously in our will to keep up with the trends and changes in the world. So my question then comes in twofold. How do we, at the same time that we are keeping up with the trends and changes in the world, how do we balance that with keeping our culture and values? And at the same time, how do we get the elders to understand that we do not want to be gifted with a country that has all its problems solved? We want to be involved in the process. How do we make sure that they understand that we want to be involved in the process so that we do not fall into the pits and mistakes that our forefathers did that resulted in the crisis that we are having today? Thank you.
Excellent questions. I can take this final question. Name and organization, and if you could keep it brief, please.
Very shortly. Thank you so much. My name is Colin Makua from South Africa. ABCCP, that's the organization.
Could you speak up, please? Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Colin Makua from South Africa, ACWBL and ABCCP. The question is, just a moment, I wrote it down. What is the role of elders in this conversation? Do they matter in Africa, in making Africa work for the youth?
What is the role of elders
in this conversation?
Old people, older people.
Older people.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Great questions. A round of applause for all the great questions from the floor. Maybe we start with you, Sanaa, the question on what can companies do to help combat some of the social ills that a lot of youth are facing? Do you have some ideas on what companies can do? In Ghana, as the question, said, things like betting and other social vices. Do you feel like there's a role companies can play in helping deal with some of the social issues?
Yeah. Can you repeat the question?
Right, and apologies for my inability to speak in French, but there are issues affecting young people across Africa. An example from Ghana is a lot of young people are becoming addicted to gambling and internet fraud, things like that. Do you feel that companies like Moderator can do something or should do something?
Yeah. Addiction like drugs, gambling, video games also are effective. Indeed, very difficult and are the perhaps the pain of this generation. As company, we are aware that our young people, when they join us, they join with their past, sometimes dramas, heavy personal histories, and we put in place what we called resiliency program, which is a large network of internal coach and also external coaches available to support people for their personal and also professional issues, complicated history, familial histories, complicated relationship with the manager sometimes, and sometimes issues like addiction. We have also medicine that can help. We have a doctor on each of our sites that is available and also provide workshop of about some topics like mental health, nutrition, sleeping, but also how to face addiction. We also launch a lot of programs against addiction. What we usually do is the easiest one is about smoking, but it's not. Opening a dialogue about those kind of issues is also a first step to make people being aware of what their situation and perhaps asking for a strongest help from therapists, for example, or so on.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And, you've given such great examples tonight of what companies can do to support young people, both in getting the jobs, but also in thriving at the job. So congratulations to your company for being such pro-youth, so pro-youth.
Thank you. Thank you, Yawa.
So Sangu, I'd love to give you the first question and the third question. The first question, how do we integrate leadership into the curricula in our schools? And the third question had to do with the intergenerational gaps. We're in the midst of a lot of cultural shift. And on the one hand, we're telling young people they're the future, but they go home and they say, my friend, you are to be seen and not heard. So how do young people reconcile the message of inspiration, but the reality of exclusion and marginalization?
Yep. Sure. Before that, just one last final comment on SMEs. So it's interesting, this has been an oft-repeated claim, this idea that SMEs create jobs. Where did it come from? In 1979, an MIT researcher by the name of David Birch looked at 5 million SMEs in the United States and studied their growth over several decades and concluded that small businesses created 80% of the jobs over that period. Multiple economists tried to replicate his study, and David Birch himself later had to confess that those numbers were exaggerated. The replication of his study that was done came with a number that was close to about 56%. A subsequent analysis in a 2010 meta-study showed that it is not about SMEs, but it's about the age of the company. So most of the jobs created in any given year come from startups, just like young children who grow faster. But when you controlled for age, it actually became a negative relationship over time because most of these startups blow up. So when you actually look at the net basis, the largest generator of jobs are not SMEs. And I say this not to bash SMEs. SMEs are important and they meet a critical need in our economy. But if we're talking about job creation and sustainable job creation, that is just not the answer to be able to capture the sort of job creation numbers that we're looking for. And if you look at the empirical evidence elsewhere. Like Apple. Apple is a great example. Apple started in the garage. And now it's $1 trillion company. So that's my point is, it's great to be an SME, but how do you grow beyond? In Ghana, it seems like in the economy, we have a lot of local champions. A lot of companies that when I was growing up were there, today they are still there. Like the growth over the last 30, 40 years, relative to peers elsewhere, is nothing to beat our chest about. And so I think that if we really want to, we need to think about how do we scale. And scale, literally no country in the world has developed its economy without going through scale. That's why I've always critiqued our industrialization policy. It's a great populist measure to say, I'll put a factory in every district, but it's a horrible economic policy because you're not going to enjoy any leverage and you're not going to enjoy operating leverage. Now, back to the questions you asked.
Thank you, Sangu. How do we integrate leadership into school curricula? And how do we bridge the intergenerational gap that seems to exist?
I'll start with the second and end with the first. So the second, it reminds me of this joke my father used to tell me. Every time I used to complain that you people, Yakolo, the old people, you know, you're ruining, blah, blah, blah. And my old man used to tell me, you know, you young people, you think we the old people, we are foolish. But we the old people, we know you are foolish. and you know, when I was young, I used to roll my eyes and not understand what he was saying. The older I got, and now being a parent, it's funny, when you become a parent and the older you get, the more and more you understand your parents. And so I'm starting to recognize the wisdom in what he's saying. It is true that young people have a lot of out and the expectations. Part of that is because they have not seen anything. No, I'm being honest. 14 years of a bull market. From 2009 till last year, the economy has just been going boom, 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 boom. So they don't know what it's like. If you went through 2008, or you went through 2001, or you went through the crisis in 97, or our parents keep talking about 1982, or what we will tell our children about 2022, you look at things differently. So I think it's very important for us to maintain that intergenerational conversation, because in the same way that I say we're not going to make it in the future without young people, we're not also going to make it without involving old people who, by the way, are also going to be a larger part of the age part of the population is going to grow as life expectancy increases, and it's going to create a challenge for us. I want to end on the question on leadership. To me, leadership in the curriculum, forget about the curriculum. Why do I say forget about the curriculum? It is not in school that your children are going to learn how to be good and decent human beings. It is at home. And let me use this opportunity to tell parents, stop outsourcing your moral responsibility to raise your children to schools. I sit on multiple school boards and I see this. A lot of you are too busy. You are too busy. You spend all this plenty money on extra classes, sending them to the top schools, but you are not raising them with the values they need to be raised with. And that's the problem. Leadership doesn't need to be in the curriculums because they should see leadership at home. They should see leadership when you are driving, that you are not there in a 2-lane road and you mix 6 lanes. That you don't tell your children to be honest and have integrity, but the way you act at home does not reflect that honesty and that integrity. That if we want our young sons to become young men who treat women right, then they need to watch their fathers at home treat their mothers right. So the curriculum I care about is the curriculum at home. I've said it before, we're all complicit and we're all corrupt. And until we stop that at home, your children will reproduce your corruption and your complicity that year.
I think we can always count on Sangu to raise the temperature in the room. You know, as we wind down this conversation tonight, you know, we've talked a lot about where responsibility lies. We've called out government, we've called out companies, we've called out parents. And as we think about, you know, what the next generation will contend with, they say we're entering an age that is, you know, volatile, potentially set for more pandemics, a climate catastrophe looming. You know, as you think, Abena, about the role that elders need to play in guiding young people for a future that is this uncertain, what do you think we need to bring to the table to enable that? And how do you feel, you know, institutions like yours, what role do you see institutions like yours playing in fostering, you know, that type of leadership for this moment?
Thank you very much. I'm very optimistic about the human's capacity to overcome and grow. And so convenings like what we are having this evening is very, very important. These discussions help us all to grow, to learn, to challenge, to see sometimes to pivot, etc. So these are very, very important. I think Sangu talked about the wisdom of experience. Leadership learning never stops because you've left grade 6 or you've graduated from university. It's a lifelong thing. The elders, and I sit here as an elder now. It really comes back to our vision for the country and what we want, and for our continent. What do we want to achieve? Today, there's a lot of focus on ESG. And ESG says that cash profitability or sustainability or the value of a business is not just anymore about the money, how much money it makes, but what it leaves behind for generations yet to come. So ESG is really guiding a lot of what we're all doing. And I think it's a very, very important subject because it allows us to look at the interest of all stakeholders. Stakeholders from your employees, to your customers, to your regulators, to civil society, to your shareholders. Your impact as a business has to take all these stakeholders into account to make sure that how you are managing, how you are taking even that product you are packaging with plastic. Very soon, there are consumers who will say, I'm not going to buy your product. Or there are regulations that will be passed in Europe that will say that this factory you've set up, this component of products, you can't even find supplies to put into that product you are busy investing in. So whether we like it or not, there's a new framework of looking at our operations, and all of us have to buy into it and make sure that we are doing things in a sustainable and equitable way. The conversations and the convening that BCA you've put together under this Made in Africa leadership, I think it's very important. What you do with the communique that comes out of this is also an important tool, and how we use it to engage companies, policymakers, thought leadership institutions is very, very important. Finally, how we track the progress we are making is important. There's talk about input into curriculum. Private schools, etc., can deal with it, but that deals with such a tiny component of the population. We are pretending there isn't all these public schools, because many of the private school children, I can see them leaving the continent. The same political leaders will come from those left behind. Are they the ones we are counting on to be persons of integrity and live the values that we want to see happening? That is why I am so excited every time I see companies like the GSC, like Cosmos Energy, like MasterCard, who are going beyond. What does MasterCard have to do with giving loans to entrepreneurs in Ghana? What has Cosmos Energy got to do with investing millions of dollars in Cosmos Innovation Center and driving agri-tech in Ghana? But they look far down the line and see that to be responsible corporates and to live a sustainable world, these are important investments to make in society. So MLC, the decisions that we will take from this conference, how we take that and influence policy and how we report on the progress we are making. I think these tools, and Yawa, you said it in your opening remarks, that we will make consequential change from some of these conveniences. I think it's the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am very, very inspired by what I've heard from each of you tonight. I want to thank you for sharing so generously and for the great questions that came from the audience. Thank you for, can you help me show appreciation first and foremost for this amazing panel? You know, as a closing thought, I just want to encourage that as you think about your life and whatever legacy you want to leave behind, you know, young people matter. And there's this framework that I would encourage, you know, if it's helpful, use, but I think of 3 circles. You know, one circle is those that are ahead of you. The second circle is those that are with you, your peers. And the last circle is who's behind you. I feel like everyone needs 3 circles. And sometimes we're so busy chasing that first circle,
the people we want to be like, the people whose attention we want, whose mentorship we need, whose coaching. And then sometimes we forget our peers and those behind us. But I have found it to be so enriching to be deliberate about finding ways to give to those who are on your level and those behind you. There's a hunger that young people across this continent have for attention. You know, our families are breaking down. And so a lot of young people aren't really getting attention, and things that used to be learned at home. You know, we are in many ways burdening schools and companies to kind of fill the gaps. But there's got to be someone in your neighborhood or in your company or in your church that you could pay closer attention to. And I would hate for you to think that it will be insignificant. But if each one helped one and created circles of people who are behind us that we are lifting, I believe that each of us can contribute to an Africa that is prosperous and united and a true gift to the generation to come. So thank you all for your time and attention tonight. Onward.
Thank you. Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our awesome panel. Thank you so much. It's been a great evening. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. That's deserving. Wow, a standing ovation. Amazing. I loved it.